What's up, YouTube? Your boy back once again with another sport topic, and today we're gonna talk some basketball, Orlando Magic basketball. But today I got two very, very special guests. Who we got today?
What's up, Ryan? Man, my name is Anthony, and I'm joined by my co-host Al. We have a podcast, Orlando Magic Podcast, called the Ozone Podcast. We also have a social media platform and website, OrlandoMagicHQ.com, and we are super excited to talk some Magic basketball with you. And I appreciate you rocking the jersey too, man. Way to represent.
Yeah, I gotta do something. I gotta do a little something. Gotta do a little something. Hey, man,
Yes, sir.
I appreciate having y'all on. Like I said, I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel, your podcast. I follow both of you guys, and like y'all, one of the people that keep me in the know when it comes to Orlando Magic basketball, especially me being all the way in Texas. But like I've been telling y'all all the time, man, if you like the content, make sure that you liking the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you comment on all the videos, share on all social media platforms, any social media platform you use. Make sure you share it on the same social media platform. So now let's talk some good Orlando Magic basketball. So I seen y'all's reaction. The little reaction y'all had from the draft lottery. So I want to ask in person, how really does it feel to win the draft lottery?
Man, I'll get us started here. It felt so real, man. First of all, I got to give a big shout out to the Six-Man Show. Those guys did a great job throwing the party, putting it together. I felt good the whole night. I just knew that no matter what, a top 4 pick was what we needed. That's all we really wanted. As the names kept coming and we didn't see the Magic's logo in those cards, it just kept feeling better and better. You could feel the environment at that party in downtown Orlando, just the hype. Everybody was getting louder. Every cheer was louder. And man, once we saw that OKC got number 2 and we got number 1, it was surreal. I have not experienced anything like that since Game 3 of the playoffs back in 2019 when we finally played at home against the Raptors. That's the only thing I can kind of compare it to. The fire, the passion in that place on the Tuesday night. Crazy enough, a week ago already. But it was a crazy experience. Anthony, I'll let you kind of describe your side of things, but I will never forget that night for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, what made it a little bit sweeter is the fact that, last year was such a major disappointment for us.
Man,
Al and I, we went on social media live. We didn't go out, luckily. And, it was really disappointing because we really wanted, we thought that was our time. And it just got to a point that we just felt like we were just unlucky. I feel like the Magic have been in an unlucky period ever since, post Dwight. And for the first time, you get all the emotions all in one time. The fact that we got the number 1 pick, the fact that we went into it not thinking, we say, hope for the best, but expect the worst. And realistically, anybody in that building, anyone in that bar that we were at, everyone would have been extremely happy and hyped as long as we made it into the top 3. And the fact that we made it to number 1, man, it's full circle because it's at the right time when we feel like, we are maybe that one piece away that can at least allow for us to start building a little more respect in the league. So, definitely an exciting night for sure.
Yes. And like I said, I also, man, shout out to the Six-Man Podcast. A year ago, I had Jonathan from off of there. We talked about the AG and Fournier Vooch trade a year ago. So kind of funny how things have changed just a year ago, because last year we were talking about building around Markelle Fultz and J.I.
Right.
Now it's kind of like a different situation. So we was hoping to get into the top 4. Like I said, I was happy with getting into the top 3. Like, I just wanted to make sure to get a top 3 pick because, like I said, last year, end up 5th was just so disgusting. But like I said, it just seems like typical things that happen to the Orlando Magic. Like, so it felt fitting. So to get that number 1 pick, it's more so shock and disbelief. Like, we actually pulled it off. Like,
Exactly.
We actually pulled it off. Like, we've been waiting for the number 1 pick since 2013. It's like almost 9 years later, and we finally pulled it off. And we but there's really no clear-cut number 1. There's no Zion. There's no Anthony Davis. There's no LeBron. Yeah, exactly. Back to Magic look. Back with the Magic look. So where are you guys looking and targeting with this number 1 overall pick?
I mean, I think for me personally, after we saw that we got the number 1 pick, in my mind, my mind did not go to not one player. I was just happy to get the top 3. I look at it as, you can't go wrong with any of the 3. And I
Right.
think that a lot of Magic fans, they really like the idea of Paolo. They like the idea of not having a project, someone that can go into the game right now, bang with the big boys, put the ball in the hoop, and really make an impact now. And I
Right.
think that there are concerns with players like Chet Holmgren, where you see the potential, you see the skill, you see the height, the wingspan, the blocking ability. You see all of that. That's great, but there are concerns with his weight. There is concern of whether or not that he can really sustain a healthy period.
Right.
And because the issue with the Orlando Magic for so many years is that we've struggled with injury,
Right.
and
Right.
we've already gotten to a point where all the national media and all these different people, they're saying that this is really a two player number one pick
Right.
of who we could be selecting between Jabari and Chet. And I think for me right now at this very moment, if Paolo is not anywhere where the Magic are looking at, it's kind of hard to ignore Jabari as the number one. So if I was to select a player, I'd put my hat on Jabari at the moment. And that is changing daily because all it takes is for me to listen to another podcast, to watch a couple YouTube videos, and I'm going back and forth between Jabari and Chet. But if you were to ask me right now, it's kind of hard to say no to Jabari at the moment.
So it's funny because I'm the same way. So for me, it's come down to two names, and that's going to be Chet or Jabari Smith. If you've been
Mm.
watching our show, listening to our podcast, I've been a Jabari Smith fan way back since like February. And I keep saying this kid just has the right tools. He plays defense. The biggest thing is he's probably the best shooter out of the top three in the draft.
Okay.
And he just fits in so nicely with the Magic. Anthony shared an interview that he did recently, and he mentioned I can play anything from the 2 all the way to the 5. And when you think about the Magic, that's what they're doing, right? They're putting a bunch of guys on the court that can pretty much guard anybody, but hopefully have enough athleticism and enough shooting ability to make it also hard on the offensive end. So when you think of those things, I feel like he fits in perfectly. Plus, I think it's a more of a sure thing out of the top three guys, in my opinion. Paulo can score, but defensively he falls asleep a little bit. He doesn't show that hunger, that passion. And I've seen Mo Bamba for the last 4 years suffered through that. So I don't want to get a guy at number one that doesn't have the fire in him. And then shooting. He, again, like I said before, he's the best shooter out of the three. If you've been following the Magic for the last 8-9 years, we cannot hit threes. This kid can come in right today into the NBA and hit wide open threes and plays good defense. That is enough for a top pick, in my opinion, if you ask me. But if the Magic called Chet's name as number one, I'll be equally excited. So I'm torn, but I'm leaning 51% Jabari, 49 Chet as of today. How about you?
Oh, Jabari is my number one player. Kind of similar to we were talking about before we start recording. While I'm an Orlando Magic fan, my favorite player, period, is T Mac. I know the Magic have been to the finals with Dwight, made it to a couple conference finals as well. For a three-time defensive player year, we all know the numbers. But the moment they traded Tracy McGrady to Houston, we have yet to fix a bona fide scorer. We do not have anybody on this team since then. So what that was 2004, 2004. Since 2004, so almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, we haven't had a guy that we can sit up here and like, here, give me 20 to 25 a night guaranteed. Like guaranteed, no matter who's on the court, you're going to get yours. And I go between both Jabari and Pablo because Pablo can score, but he can't. It's not that he can't shoot. He's just not the most polished shooter. And when I look at Jabari can shoot, and it's all Jabari can always shoot. And because he's the better shooter, I lean towards the better shooter. This is me personally, and I just lean towards the better shooter. When it comes with Chet, I'm probably I guess I disagree with you guys. I really don't want no parts of Chet. I know people make a big thing about him and Suggs went to high school together and things like that. That frame at 195 scares me because we kind of had the same similar thing with J.I. and Mo Bamba, two guys who came into the league with this organization on the skinny side, and they've put on some weight, but they haven't put on the necessary weight. And we've seen both of them. J.I. still dealing with one. Both of them deal with their use of injuries. And you're talking about he's going to be going up against the Giannis's and the Embiids and the Jokic's and things of that nature. Can he bang against those big bodies night in and night out for a 82-game season with that small frame? I have a lot of concerns about that. And when you give somebody the number one pick, that's your guy. Like, you can't double back and be like, oh, yeah, once you hitch yourself to that wagon, you have to hitch yourself to that wagon. So you have to be sure, especially if we've been waiting so long to get this pick. It seems like we've been taking since 2013. So.
Yeah, and you know what impresses me the most about Jabari, that in my opinion kind of gives him the edge, is the fact that he's had a different exposure than someone like Chet and Paolo, where his dad did play professionally. He did play in the NBA. And in a recent interview that he had with Shams, they talked about how, he's been kind of preparing himself for this moment for a really, really long time, treating himself like a professional, eating the right type of foods. The fact that he, was kind of molded into this, it leads me to believe that, this is, I don't want to necessarily say that it's a safer pick, but I have more confidence that we're going to get more out of Jabari than a player like Chet Holmgren, because the shooting capability is there, the body is there for the NBA, and the fact that he had that early exposure, I think that's going to make the world of difference with this guy.
Right. So, like I was saying, even though we already know when you hit yourself to a wagon, that's your guy. But outside that, where do you see the direction for this organization? Like, who do you think they're building around? Because I know on y'all podcast, right after we got the number one overall pick, y'all said, don't get married to any of these guys. Like, don't fall in love with any of the guys on this roster, because this roster could change by the time November hits and the season starts. That whoever you basically have your favorite jersey of might not be on this team, because things might change. So who do you think are going to be the guys you build around?
I mean, it's got to be Wendell Carter for sure. It's got to be Franz. And that's where it kind of ends for me, because the guards, right? So you think about Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Markelle. Ideally, Markelle stays healthy. And if that is the case, then you got to add his name to those three. So now you have Markelle, Franz, and Wendell. Anything outside of that, it's up in the air, including, unfortunately, J.I., and mainly because of health reasons. Now, J.I. comes to training camp healthy. He's, playing 25, 30 minutes a night. He's playing like he did at the bubble, where he was a beast defensively and also hitting shots now. Then that's a whole different conversation. Now, all of a sudden, you got yourself now 4 guys that can be in that equation, plus possibly our first-round pick. So the Magic are in the situation where you really don't know what we have yet because of health issues that we've had in the last few years. But if everything falls into place, I kept saying in the past, the J.I. thing may work out like the Stephen Curry injury impacted the Warriors way back in 2013-14 when they signed him for cheap, but he was finally able to recover and never hurt his ankle anymore. And because of that, the Magic, or in this case, the Warriors, had money to spend in free agency, were able to keep drafting good players. The Magic have kind of done that. They've built a great team of young guys. They have cap space because J.I. signed to a $60 million deal. If everything falls into place, we may be a really, really good team. Maybe not next year, but maybe the year after that. So if you ask me, Wendell, Franz, possibly Markelle, if healthy, are the guys you're building around right now. Everyone else, they got to pan out and they got to earn it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more than possibly when it comes to Markelle. I mean, this is a guy that we just gave a contract extension. He's on our, roster for the next 2 years guaranteed. And I think that, we've already saw a little glimpse. They had him on a minute restrictions, didn't play no more than 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, you saw a player that was really able to maximize that time frame. I mean, he made Wendell Carter look like an animal, to the point where, the Jeff Weltman said that he believes that Wendell Carter is top 10 big in the league. And this is a player that, really struggled a lot in Chicago. Granted, you can blame that on health. You can blame it on a number of things. But, now we're saying that Wendell Carter is a big part of our future. And I think that you take a look at Markelle Fultz, and just imagining how well Markelle Fultz is as a playmaker, and how well that he would be able to kind of gel with a player like Jabari Smith. I think Markelle the Magic have to decide, all right, who is going to be our point guard of the future? And it gets a little confusing because you have Markelle, then you drafted Cole, then you drafted Jalen Suggs. And I think what made it really interesting is today I heard the podcast of David Aldridge and Josh Robbins on I can't remember the name of the podcast, but it was for The Athletic. And they were kind of talking like who would be the odd man out in a sense, like who if the Washington Wizards were looking for a point guard and they're looking at the Orlando Magic as a team that has a group of three that you can try to pry one away, who would be the one? And they were talking Jalen Suggs as a potential player that maybe they should go after and try to steal away from the Orlando Magic. And I think that there can't be any confusion. The Orlando Magic need to decide exactly who is going to be our point guard of the future. Jalen Suggs is a player that you can play at the two. There's questions about his ball handling. There's questions about, some of the decision making that he's made. But I think that you look at Markelle Fultz, and I would agree with Al. It's Markelle, it's Wendell, and it's Franz Wagner. Those are your three pillars. You still need to figure out what's going to happen with Jonathan Isaac. You're going to pray and hope that Markelle stays healthy. And then I think it ultimately comes down to, how well our number one pick really does this season, because the Orlando Magic, eventually they're going to have to make decisions, and they have a lot of different decisions to make. There's so many different avenues and ways that they can kind of move forward. They just have to make those decisions, and they got to do it sooner rather than later.
I agree, because I think outside of people in Orlando or people like me who watch Orlando basketball, they don't understand how valuable, in my opinion, that Markelle is. Because people, like, he still has that number one stigma from Philly. And yep. I tell people all the time, he's not the same guy that was playing in Philly. And I agree. I think Markelle, obviously the season that Franz Wagner just had, being named a first team all rookie, he's safe. I think Markelle is probably the safest person outside of that, if not safer, because for two things. One, the way they treated him and the fanfare that the organization had, not just the fans, just the organization had when he came back. They almost had a moment of silence, almost stopped the whole game when he got on the court. Like it was crazy with like watching the game.
They did stop the game. They called a timeout.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it was the prodigal son that's returned type situation. It was like they have put all their eggs in Markelle's basket. And actually for good reason, because right before the season got suspended 2 years ago when it came to the pandemic and the bubble, those last 10 games, Markelle was on the tear. The second to last game before the season ended, they played here in Houston. And I went to the game when they played against the Rockets. And that was a fully loaded Rocket team where everybody was healthy. You had your James Hardens, you had your Russell Westbrooks, and he gave those guys fits. We know those guys have trouble playing defensively, but it's still, those are two superstar former MVPs. He was giving those guys fits. And then when the season started last year, before he got hurt, when we started off 4-0, like the way he played when they gave him that contract, he looked very deserving of it. Now the injury happened, and I think people kind of forgot about him. So I definitely think he's safe. And I agree with Wendell. Wendell is the same thing. Maybe it might be a different scene. Maybe something is going on over there in Disneyland, because Wendell is a different guy from the guy he was in Chicago. And I watched a lot of Wendell because I watched a lot of Duke basketball. I did not like that Wendell Marvin Bagley Duke team. That's probably one of the worst Duke teams I've ever seen. I did not like that. So I was not high on Wendell going into the draft. I wasn't high on him or Marvin Bagley. But Wendell, the moment he's come to Orlando, he looks like a different player. And you're right. These last stretch of games, he looked like an absolute monster. I don't know if I'm going to say top big yet. Like I don't know if I can go right there yet. I don't know if I can walk on that.
I'm just quoting what the man said.
I don't know if I can go out with that one yet. But in all, like I'm saying, that it seems like it's a lot of pieces, and it's weird because, like I said, when me and Jonathan spoke a year ago after the trade, it was building around Markelle and it was building around Jonathan Isaac. Now, is the organization frustrated with J.I.?
Go ahead, Al.
Oof. That's a tough question. I mean, and again, if you've been listening to our show or watching us on YouTube, it's a touchy subject that we have more often than we should, honestly. You want to throw out there the politics of it. You want to throw out there whatever you want to throw. Keeping it just basketball.
Yeah.
You got to be, man. You got to be because 2 years to recover from a knee injury, whatever the reasons may be, we will never know. Now he's finally recovering. He's finally getting joining practice, kind of, and boom, now the hamstring injury happens. So you gotta be. I mean, you pay this kid, this guy. I know the front office loves him. I think the organization loves what he is, what he stands
Right.
for. But at the end of the day, you gotta get on the court. We're paying you millions of dollars to play basketball. We need to see you out there. So I don't know if they're upset at him or disappointed, but I think it's time for him to show up. And I'm so glad we found out the new contract, the structure behind it, and how little money is really committed to him if he cannot stay healthy. That was a
Right.
really, really smart move by the front office. It keeps us able to remain competitive in the event that, hey, you cannot play, we can waive you, and we can sign a replacement right away. We got plenty of money to replace you. Again, that's the last thing I want to see, though. I really want JI to come back to be healthy because, again, his potential is really, his ceiling is, we don't know it yet. He's gotten stronger. He's supposedly shooting the ball much better. And if he can play defense anywhere close to how he was before, my goodness, I mean, this guy's going to make us better right away. The same impact that Markel had last season when he came back from his injury, I think JI can have for us. So I'm truly hoping it pans out, but you got to think that it's time for him to show up. Otherwise, we got to move forward.
Yeah, because I don't necessarily think that they're frustrated with him, but you got to be disappointed. I mean, this guy has missed more games than he's actually played. But again, he is like he was their first draft pick. He's their epitome of what now everyone believes every single draft pick is kind of like this image of Jonathan Isaac. That's what people expect. But I agree with Al. It comes to a point that, my man, you got to play now.
Right.
And kudos to the front office because, one, they put ourselves in a good financial position with Jonathan Isaac where, we can kind of have that little bit of security. But at the same time, you have to now kind of view the team moving forward, making decisions on a world without Jonathan Isaac. And I think that that's what kind of makes his draft so important, because a player like Chet, a player like Jabari, that's going to kind of fill that void of not having Jonathan Isaac if you don't have him because you haven't had him in the last 2 years. Now it gets to a point that the fan base is already frustrated with Jonathan Isaac. You add all the stuff outside of the NBA world that is being thrown into the mix. And it's kind of like, if Jonathan Isaac plays, amazing, great. If he doesn't play, then we have Jabari, we have Chet, we have a player to now kind of fill those shoes and still allow for us to be able to move forward.